I'm here to talk about Roll Town, this book that I'm just obsessed with, and a lot of my friends and colleagues are too. And I'm here with Jeff Thomson, a friend of mine, teaches up at the University of Maine at Farmington. Big fan of the Accidentalists, obviously, but you've got an even kind of cooler connection to it, don't you?
Well, I do. Obviously, I knew about the Accidentals from from history, from being an art lover, and I knew about Carrollton and that connection, but I didn't know really. I hadn't done the work to know that one of the main, Harrison County brutalists spent time in Farmington, where I teach. And so, you know this, Chad, but lots of people might not, right? So he grew up with his brother Gunther in New Jersey, and after the war, he sort of wandered what he called the hobo trail, which, we don't really know a whole lot about. But he, talking this hobo language with his brother, and they made their way up to Farmington to work in the booming earmuff industry, right? And he spent a number of years here before leaving in the early 60s, maybe 65, I think it was, and then heading down to Carrollton and joining that group. But, to be able to walk in his footsteps, just sort of breathe the same air.
Yeah, and there's a piece. I think there's in the retrospect that there is a piece of Blecht's Fenny #4 that's still in Farmington. Have you been able to track that down?
I have. There's a photo of it, right? And you can go there. It's a little overgrown, like so many of these are, sadly, but you can still see the architecture. You can still see the cupola, right? It's there. It's and it's an early piece, so it doesn't have the full power of the Roll Town series, right? That are just subversive and ubiquitous at the same time in Carrollton and its environs, right down the Latin Quarter and in the back alleys of Old Krakow.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm thinking of that great piece in the New Yorker when the New Yorker covered the Accidentalists, and they were obsessed with Blecht. I mean, the piece might as well have been a Blecht review and not just the Accidentalists. And one of the things he talked about in that New Yorker piece was just the kind of the subversiveness of the sense that his art resists nothing. It's everywhere and nowhere all at once. I mean, we really don't know how many Blechts are currently still in Carrollton, because they mimic so well parts of the industrial culture.
Absolutely. And you can just walk over one and not even know it.
Yeah.
Right. And people do every day. That's what it's both tragic and beauty. It's a tragic beauty of Blecht. And that's sort of everything about him. His tendency to smell like garlicky sausage and old wine.
Yeah.
That followed him everywhere, apparently. I don't, that's at least what I've read. And he talks about that in the Dick Cavett interview. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
When Cavett sort of comes at him with this sort of smarmy kind of, aren't you
think about Van Gogh,
aren't you just imitating? And he rightly says, well, all art is imitation. It's up to the viewer to break down the walls between sort of the mimetic and the real, and find the art in the object. I mean, and I think the Revolution series is truly the height of his work and his attention to that kind of industrial perfection.
Yeah, and it's sort of, I mean, I think a lot of people would perhaps say that the Revolution series is the best representation of accidentalism writ large.
I certainly would. I mean, I'm a Blecht, devotee, right? But I think there are certainly others, Patty Rasmussen and Emmental, and like there's so many. I mean, the time was so rich. There are those moments, Chad, and this, right? Paris in the late 20s, or
New York in the jazz age,
Juarez in 1965. I think there's just a magic about Carrollton that could not be recreated. But I would love to have a time machine and be able to go back and just see the work happening, right? And see and sneak out with Blecht, and as he installs another in the Revolution series on some dead end street somewhere, right? Just in the neighbor and sort of watches the neighborhood wakes up to this. There's art in the road. Who did this?
Well, we do have a time machine, and we love this book. And I'm telling you, get out there and find this thing. It's a gem. I appreciate the time, Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks for the conversation. So much fun.